kind of floats like a butterfly, you know, just like so much finesse and just so much beautiful accuracy to then really make the most opportunities right there and hitting the dare back and forth. You know, oh man, we do gotta see him. Dummies X has a chance. Whoa! What? Whoa! The throne.
Top 5 or a top 3 finish. This is such a huge match.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, even from. Oh, stop!
What a start!
Oh my goodness!
What a start!
Straight down, finding those really nice offstage neutral airs on guitars is so satisfying.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. You can use it in so many different ways because it sends them radially outward from
Yes.
exactly wherever you hit them with. Oh yeah, that's the direction that they're getting sent. So you can use it to bounce them off the ground. Oh my gosh! Kylar Alice!
What about it?
Or, you know, when they all left.
Oh my gosh.
Kylar Alice taking that first stock, but he still has 2 to go to stay alive.
We're going to see a perfect stock from Kylar Alice here. He tries to do a cheeky kind of diagonal up, the diagonal down recovery through.
He's got a chance. The dodge is spent. The recovery's beat out. Kylar Alice, we're back in it, baby.
Here we go. This is what he needed to bring this back and potentially this set. A swing of momentum in his favor. Can he keep it going? It looks like the answer is yes.
Kylar Alice, go! Kylar Alice, the reverse 3 stock.
Kylar Alice has kind of been like, you know, King Kong, the undisputed champion, this big beast who has just been dominating this region for so long.
To understand why Kylar Alice means so much to the Australian scene, you have to go all the way back to 2016. This was a very different era of the game. Brawlhalla was still growing, the competitive scene was still finding its identity, and for Australia, the region was still trying to prove it deserved to stand alongside the rest of the world. Then came the 2016 regional qualifier, the first official Australian tournament, and it was Kylar Alice who came out on top. That win didn't just give Kylar his first major piece of history, it marked the beginning of one of the most dominant runs the region would ever see. From that point forward, Kylar became the face of Australian competition.
Oh no, and that's it. That's it. Kylar takes it. Bingo.
He's gonna have that plane ticket in his hand. He is gonna have that hotel room in his hand. Kylar Alice, you're coming to BCX.
Between 2016 and 2021, Kylar Alice built a legacy that very few players in Brawlhalla history can compare to. He wasn't just winning occasionally, he was consistently winning across multiple years, multiple metas, and multiple generations of players. Every region has that one player people talk about with a different level of respect. For Australia, that was Kylar. He became known for his consistency, his dominance, and his ability to stay at the top long after most players would have fallen off. While other names came and went, Kylar remained. Tournament after tournament, season after season, he kept proving that the throne still belonged to him. By the time his peak years were over, Kylar had earned 26 official tournament gold medals, making him one of the most decorated players not just in Australia, but in all of Brawlhalla history. But what made Kylar's legacy even bigger was that he didn't only dominate at home, he also proved Australia could compete internationally.
Can he finish the stock? Needs to stuff it. No! But he's got another opportunity. Again, stuffs it, and that is going to do it.
But for Australian players, competing internationally was never simple. Brawlhalla's competitive home base was in America, with BMG based in Atlanta. And for Australian players, that distance created one of the biggest barriers in the entire scene. Traveling from Australia to American LAN events was extremely expensive. Flights, accommodation, time off, the distance, the cost. For most Australian players, going overseas to compete wasn't just difficult, it was almost impossible. And that meant Australia had a problem that a lot of other regions didn't experience in the same way. It wasn't just about skill, it was about access. Australia had talent, but most of that talent never had a realistic path to prove itself overseas. That's why BMG providing paid flights and accommodation for the #1 players of each region mattered so much. For Kylar Alice, it opened a door that most Australian players simply didn't have. He wasn't just being given a chance to compete, he was being given a chance to show the world what Australia was capable of. And when Kylar finally got that chance, he proved Australia belonged. In 2016, Kylar placed 9th at BCX. For Australia, that result mattered. It was proof that the region wasn't just isolated talent beating up on each other. It showed that an Australian player could travel to the biggest stage in Brawlhalla and stand toe-to-toe with some of the best players in the world. Then at Shine in 2017, he placed 9th once again. 2 different major international events, 2 standout performances, and a message that was impossible to ignore. Australia had talent, and Kylar Alice was leading the charge. For many players in the region, those results were bigger than just placements. They were proof that Australian Brawlhalla could matter. Kylar wasn't just winning for himself, he was carrying the reputation of an entire region every time he competed. And for years, he continued to do exactly that.
And just continues the pressure. Aquarian's gonna die, actually.
Oh,
That's
my
it.
lord.
I'm gonna
got
do
the
it.
hit.
Oh, and then what happens is you
What?
get no stomp side
All right.
sig. Oh no.
He's shown he's got a bunch of stuff, but he hasn't shown he's got a Russian Mafia because he's dropped it 3 times. But the down sig will connect. Kylar Alice, not quite in KO percent, not really good. Oh, he goes for the Mafia and he gets it, Kylar Alice, before going for reset in Grand Finals. Oh, come on, Kylar. With every single character in the roster of Brawlhalla, I think we're at like, what, 42 characters or something? Something insane, as that ground pound was insane. Kylar Alice, many should players be expected to be kind of throwing out, and what is like an extreme, such as that 16, or Kylar Alice's extreme edge guards. Ground pound to punish.
As the years went on, Kylar's name became almost impossible to separate from Australian Brawlhalla. If you were a new player trying to climb, Kylar was the benchmark. If you were a top player trying to prove yourself, Kylar was the final test. If you wanted to be considered the best, eventually you had to go through him. That is what separates a great player from a legendary one. Great players win, legends define what winning looks like. And from 2016 to 2021, Kylar Alice defined Australian greatness. His dominance wasn't just about mechanics or tournament results, it was about the fear and respect that came with his name. When Kylar entered a bracket, people knew what it meant. He wasn't just another competitor. He was the player everyone was chasing. For years, Australian Brawlhalla revolved around one question: who could finally take down Kylar Alice? And for a long time, the answer was simple: almost nobody. But no era lasts forever, and by the end of 2023, Australian Brawlhalla was facing one of the darkest periods in its competitive history. By the end of 2023, Australian Brawlhalla was heading toward one of the darkest periods in its competitive history. For years, the region had already struggled with distance, limited opportunities, and a smaller competitive scene compared to places like North America and Europe. But what happened in 2023 wasn't just a slow decline, it was a collapse. Multiple Australian pro players began stirring up controversy across the community. Drama that might have once stayed inside Discord servers or private conversations started spilling out onto social media. Accusations, arguments, screenshots, callouts, the kind of things that don't just damage individual reputations, but start damaging the reputation of an entire region. And then in just a few short months, everything came crashing down. Around 10 Australian pro players ended up getting banned. For a region as small as Australia, that number was devastating. This wasn't a massive scene where 10 players could disappear and everything would continue like nothing happened. These were some of the region's most known competitors, players who had been part of tournaments, rivalries, rankings, and the competitive identity of Australian Brawlhalla. And once those bans happened, the scene changed almost overnight. But even then, it didn't stop. Some of the controversial players tried to ult into the next available majors, playing on alternate accounts despite already being banned. And once those accounts were found out, they were banned too. At that point, the damage was bigger than just the original punishments. The region was left in a state of distrust. Players didn't know who was genuine anymore. Tournament organizers had to question whether banned players were secretly entering brackets. The community became suspicious, divided, and exhausted. And for Blue Mammoth Games, the situation had become impossible to ignore. Australia was already difficult to support because of distance, cost, and logistics. But now, on top of all of that, the region was surrounded by controversy. Eventually, official support was pulled. But there was no big announcement, no public statement, no clear goodbye. Nobody from BMG came out and said Australia is no longer part of the official circuit. It happened much quieter than that. The region only really found out in 2024 when the new esports year was announced. For the first time ever, Australia looked at the official circuit and it wasn't there. No Australian seasonal, no official pathway, no real sign that the region was still being supported. The message was clear. Australia was out. And for Kylar Alice, a player who had already given years to the game, that seemed to mark the end. There was no longer a real circuit to fight for, no official tournaments, no major regional support, no clear future. So Kylar quietly stepped away. No dramatic farewell, no huge announcement, no final speech, just silence. But even after Australia was removed from the official circuit, the scene never completely died. In 2025, there were still a handful of small community tournaments. They weren't huge events, they didn't have official backing, they didn't have the same prestige as the old BMG-supported circuit, and at the time, it didn't feel like enough to bring the region back. But it gave players something, a reason to keep queuing, a reason to keep entering brackets, a reason to believe that maybe Australian Brawlhalla wasn't finished yet. Those small tournaments became embers, and slowly, those embers started to spread.
It does kill Kylar, but Marcus is just about ready to use it.
Wow, side sig off the side. Is he gonna get the edge guard? Goes for a chase dodge side air, and Artist sneaks by it. Downlight side air off the edge. Here comes the ground pound. There it is. Gets the kill.
It's got all the strength behind it and some absolutely ridiculous signatures. Oh, catches the dodge read and the anti-airs, just chopping him away. Shadow already out of here. How fast with the 18-second knockout?
What began as a few community-run events would eventually snowball into what some players might consider the great return of Australian Brawlhalla. Australia was still excluded from the official circuit. There was still no official seasonal, no direct pathway back into BMG esports, no sign that the region was being welcomed back. But the community didn't wait for permission. Passionate players, tournament organizers, and supporters came together to build one of the strongest community circuits the region had ever seen. Prize pools started growing, production improved, old players started paying attention again, new players had something real to compete for. And eventually, multiple $2,000 community prize pools brought in participant numbers that Australia hadn't seen since the last official tournaments in 2023. For the first time in years, the region felt alive again. Not because BMG brought it back, but because the community did. And then, right as Australian Brawlhalla was beginning to feel like itself again, Kylar Alice returned. But before he even entered the bracket, there were already signs that something was happening. In the days leading up to the 2026 tournaments, Kylar started streaming again. For longtime Australian players, even seeing him live was enough to get people talking. This wasn't just some random ranked session. This was Kylar Alice, the greatest player the region had ever seen, picking the game back up with a major tournament right around the corner. And after the events, he even uploaded his tournament run to his YouTube channel. That detail matters because it showed this wasn't just a completely silent one-off appearance. For a brief moment, Kylar seemed present again. He was streaming, he was competing, he was uploading, and he was giving the community a glimpse of what a real comeback could look like. His first major return came at Blub's Brawlhalla Bonanza, a $2,000 1v1 tournament. After years away from the game, nobody really knew what to expect. Would he be rusty? Would the newer generation be too far ahead? Was this just a brief appearance from a player whose era had already passed? Kylar placed 5th. Then he entered Final Hit Winter Championship. Again, he was stepping into a scene filled with players who had been active, grinding, and adapting while he had been away. And again, Kylar proved he could still compete. He placed 7th. For most players, a 5th and 7th place finish might just be solid results. But for Kylar, after years away from serious competition, it meant something more. It meant the legend still had it. He may not have been dominating the way he once did, he may not have instantly taken back the throne, but he was still there, still fighting, still keeping up, still going toe-to-toe with some of the best players in the region, and suddenly people started to wonder, was Kylar Alice really back?
Really trying to put pressure onto Kyler
Flash
here.
out.
There's the clash.
Oh,
and the
stage
stage
spike.
That's what you love to see.
Amazing edge guard coming out from Kylar Alice.
Man, look at Axe.
Steel Series throwing extra prizes into the mix here, and Kyler has his eyes set on that Apex Pro. If he doesn't already have one, he's gonna have one soon.
The back hit, that wasn't even a true combo, it was the back hit of the down sig. And like Kyler, I think Kyler's gonna lose the stock this time. I think.
Just careful with that spear neutral.
Oh, it's looking bad. Oh, it's looking bad.
Yeah, it's
oh,
gone.
It's
gone.
Bad.
After final hit Winter Championship, Kylar Alice vanished again. He left the related servers, he stepped away from the community, and since then, he hasn't really been seen. No follow-up tournament run, no full comeback arc, no final answer, just another quiet exit. In a way, that only adds to the mystery of Kylar Alice. He returned just long enough to remind everyone who he was, then disappeared before anyone could know what he might have become. Maybe he was never planning to fully come back. Maybe he only wanted to compete one more time. Maybe the game had changed too much. Maybe life had simply moved on. Whatever the reason, Kylar's second disappearance left the community with one question. Was that the last time we'll ever see him compete? Kylar Alice's legacy is already set in stone. He was the first official Australian champion, the most dominant player of Australia's early competitive era, a 26-time official tournament winner, an international competitor who could stand among the best, and someone who had earned the respect and recognition from the rest of the world. Kylar Alice came back once. Maybe he'll come back again. Or maybe the legend has already played his final set. Either way, Australian Brawlhalla will always remember the name Kylar Alice. Because some players win tournaments, some players become champions, but only a few become the standard. And for Australia, Kylar Alice was that standard.